It seems that one of the greatest phenomena in the church in the last 100 years or so is that we really don't speak about hell, the reality of hell, nearly as much as we used to, or even as much as Jesus speaks about it in the Gospels. You know, Jesus in the Gospel makes no bones about it, about the reality of hell, and this idea that I think we've fallen into, that somehow heaven is like a participation trophy we automatically just get when we die. You know, how much of a lie that is, and how far that goes from what Jesus tells us when he says, broad is the way that leads to destruction, narrow is the way that leads to life. And in our own time, really, with the three seer children of Fatima, St. Faustina, these mystics, they testify to the reality of hell, how the three seer children were given a vision of hell, how horrible it is, how if people were to see it, they would do anything in their power to not go there and to prevent anyone else from going there by doing penances for sinners. You know, how St. Faustina testifies in her diary that hell is real, it's eternal, and that many of the folks who are there did not believe in the reality of hell. You know, so in our own time, I think God has acted in a very powerful way to remind us of the reality of hell. And what are we really to make of it? You know, I love what the Catechism says, when the Catechism says that hell calls man to responsibility for his actions. There's been some pretty bad thinking in the church in recent times that pretty much all of our actions, all of our sins are just kind of relative. You know, there's nothing that we can do that's really truly evil. We can always kind of justify it in one way or another because of circumstances, that we're never really responsible. You know, I think we see this in a lot of ways playing out in society. You know, we kind of write off people's actions. We write off the responsibility for our actions. He didn't really know what he was doing. She really didn't mean it that way. He was, you know, kind of somewhere else mentally when he did X, Y, or Z, or, you know, he was traumatized and he couldn't think straight when he did this or he did that, and that somehow we can just write off all responsibility for everything we've done. But, you know, the Catechism tells us something pretty different, that no, we ultimately are responsible for our actions, that our actions are ours. We have to own them. And through taking responsibility for our actions, you know, we're told through the reality of hell that, yeah, it's serious business, that the spiritual life is a matter of death and life. And obviously, you know, Christian joy goes beyond just living out of a sort of sense of fear or terror or being petrified of God. You know, that's not what we're ultimately called to. You know, in the spiritual life, we're called to move from a place of slavish fear or just having an imperfect contrition. You know, to use the term, you know, imperfect contrition, meaning that I'm sorry for my sins because of the consequences it's going to have for me. I'm sorry for my sins because I can go to hell because of them. We're called to move from that ultimately to perfect contrition. You know, God, I'm sorry for my sins because of how they've offended you. You who are worthy and deserving of all my love. You know, to move towards a love of God that looks like the love coming from a son or a daughter. You know, that's the love we're called to have for God. You know, that's the love that heaven is made of. So that call to responsibility, it's a call to own those actions. It's a call ultimately for a purification and perfecting of our love. You know, to be able to enter into heaven, to have our souls purified by God's love so that we're able to get there and to really truly relate to God for all eternity as a son or daughter. So that takes work. That takes us holding ourselves accountable, and that takes us not settling for anything less than that love of God, and how that love of God has to transform everything we are. And God bless you.